Accept no imitations. FPL BlackBox is back. I am joined for the new season once again by Mr. Mark Southerns. Have you missed us, everyone? How are you, Mark?
Boom! I'm so excited. I'm finally getting there with the FPL fever, which has taken a while to set in. I've got to say, obviously the Euros doused it a bit, and the England disappointment. But now it's starting to gear up. Now, while I've started preparing for this show, I started to really feel it. I'm ready now for the new season.
Look at your backdrop now. I mean, you've gone full, UFO spaceship in the shed. You've got black soundproofing things on your wall. You've got blue lights to represent our new theme.
Yeah, new colours.
Oh, yeah, new colours. Yeah, I mean, people were quite, split. On should we keep the yellow? Should we switch to the blue? Arctic won the vote. Here we are.
Well, it suits the temperatures that we've got at the moment. No, it doesn't. It's absolutely sweltering. I've had to leave my door open in the shed, and I've got some fans running.
Which I might turn this robot just blowing on you lightly, like cold air, in that room. I've just got this old school thing.
That would be an upgrade, wouldn't it? Let me just turn this fan off.
Let me just put the robot on and get him.
There we go. That's better. I don't want that.
Robot Hoover bringing you a drink. That'd be good as well.
No, I've got away from the robots. But yeah, maybe one day we'll upgrade to a robot fanning me. That'd be nice. We'll see how we go. So we're back, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because I know there's a lot of talk on Twitter about it being too early. There's talk of fatigue from last season and the Euros as well, and I do feel a bit of that. I do think the game did launch too early, and I did tweet, look, come on. I'm going to leave it 2 or 3 weeks before I look at anything.
Fatigue! You didn't even play the Euros game.
I know, I know. I did it as a rest. But do you not think FPL went too early?
I got some extra crushing disappointment in by doing terribly at the Euros game.
Did you do bad? I was going to ask. How did you do?
Not well. No, I want a bit of money on fan team, but on the UEFA game I finished like 220,000 or something.
Right.
Yeah, let's definitely not talk about that. Did it launch too early? Yeah, probably. I think it probably did. I think I could have maybe done with a couple of weeks of rest. And I think we're going to talk about prices and stuff, I guess, in the show. I think they could maybe have used a bit more time on some of the prices as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you go that early, you open yourself up to being exposed by some transfers, right? And hopefully that doesn't happen. It hasn't really kicked in yet, the transfer market. There's been moves, but not really major stuff that affects FPL managers. There's plenty of talk of that. And I think that obviously affects what we can do. Like, we are going to show drafts tonight, but I do get the point. It's too early. There's really zero commitment to what I'm going to show tonight.
No, they're not drafts, Mark. They're team reveals.
No, they're drafts.
They are 100%. Locked in teams.
This team reveals thing, I don't buy into it at all. Drafts is fine because it suggests work in progress, which is exactly what mine is. But you're going for team reveal, are you?
It's called clickbait. It's how we get the viewers in. You've got to learn these things.
Yeah, I know. I'm naive, aren't I? But how many of the team are you going to have at day one? Come on, seriously. 2, 3?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Probably more than that. I think there's some core players who I'll probably keep. I mean, there's lots of them. There's rumours of them moving. I mean, not necessarily they're in my team, even though they are. But I want to listen to the end. Like Grealish, Maddison, both linked. You got Sancho coming in. What's going to happen with Fernandes? There's lots of if Abraham moves to Villa, what happens to Watkins as he gets shifted out to the left? There's so much that can happen. But I still think the team reveals, team drafts, whatever you want to call them, they're still good for stimulating some kind of discussion. And I'm looking forward to seeing the team you've put together so that we can argue.
You saw, I said last night I'm not going to show a team because it's too early, and you saw what I had, and you got to show that.
Yeah.
And I'm not showing that.
You're not showing it.
I'm showing something different. So there.
Oh, that would have been a great discussion. That's a shame.
No, you'll still find some points, I think, in what I show. But really, it counts for nothing at the moment. What does count, though, and what is the focus of this show, are the fixtures, because they won't change, right? We know what the fixtures are, and I think in this tonight's show, I wanted to just do a bit of an in-depth analysis of the fixtures, going a bit further than perhaps we've done in the past in pre-season. We didn't have the opportunity last season. We had a couple of shows before it all kicked off, whereas this season we've got a few more. And so I wanted to start this one into a deep dive into the fixtures. And I've done some interesting analysis because I fell into the trap of going on Twitter and putting some data out there. And we all know that when you put data on Twitter, you know what happens, don't you? You know what happens? Go on.
Well, you get it thrown back in your face later.
You do. And people come back to go, what about this? And did you think of this? And it's like, no, because it's a tweet and it's limited characters. And, I've just put it out there to stimulate a bit of conversation, really, which is what I was doing. It was about Ben White and the fact that people were saying, well, is he better off at Brighton than he is at Arsenal in terms of an FPL asset? And I just, while I was researching the show, just put some stats out there about how Arsenal fared in the last 8. And quite rightly, it got picked up that Arsenal's fixtures were far more favourable than Brighton's towards the end in the last 8. And they were. Fair enough, fair dues. And, I wasn't putting my numbers out there as anything conclusive. I was just putting it out there to stimulate the chat. No, yeah, right. But they raised a good point and they fell into the kind of trap that I set in that the important thing is the fixtures over those 8 games. And if anything, they underlined the importance of what we're going to do tonight. And they pointed me towards doing something that I wasn't going to do, but I think is valuable, which is to look at the last 8 games and the form of teams and players over those last 8, but also look at what the ticker predicted for those teams and players before those games are played. So we can look at to see, well, how effective is the ticker at predicting how players are going to fare? And we don't really know. No one really bothers to go back and do this, right? And one of the guys on Twitter raised this, and he was absolutely right. We should look at the ticker more as a basis of review rather than projection. So we're going to do that, and it is interesting, I can promise you now. So there you go.
Oh, there you go. That's your clickbait. Nice.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think we're going to start the discussion by talking about lockdown and the home and away thing, right? Because definitely it changed things, didn't it, for the home teams and away teams? And I've got some data on that we're going to talk through. So let's bring that up first of all, because this is home form and away form last season, and it is quite stark, just how much it was evened out because of the lack of fans in the stadiums. You can see there that the points per game total for away matches was 26.64 compared to 24.97 for home matches, and equally clean sheets, 32% clean sheet rate compared to 31 at home. So it's clear that the home advantage was lost. So have you got any comments on that? Have you had any thoughts on it?
I do. Well, I did a bit of research on this. It's a new season, new me. I'm going to help chip in with some of this stuff. Yeah. So the average of the season in the home games was 38% wins for home teams, which is low, right?
Yeah.
You'd expect that to be a lot higher. It increased back to what we'd kind of expect more in the last 2 games of the season when home fans came in, went up to 55%.
Wow. So it really did jump. That's funny because when I was doing some research into double figures, I noticed on the last game week, most of the double figure scores were at home, and I was like thinking, hello, there's something here. I wonder if Az is digging into that. So that confirms it, right? Immediately fans returned, home advantage. So here's a question for you. Do you think with fans likely to be more vociferous, more behind their team, more passionate, because obviously the novelty of getting back watching football again, do you think the home advantage will be even more stark?
I mean, logically, I just wonder how much of an impact it could have. I mean, obviously, it's a big increase on those last 2 games, but it's a small sample size. But I can't help but think that it might have a much bigger impact, because I always thought when a new signing plays for a team, like Werner, for example, started at Chelsea and didn't have him coming on the pitch, looking around, seeing all the fans cheering his name, holding banners up for him and stuff. I just think, especially for the new players, it just gives them that little bit of an extra lift. And for a team like Chelsea, having just won the Champions League, fans back, they're going to be going absolutely nuts. So I don't know. I'm surprised that it had such a big impact in the last 2 weeks. I think it could continue. So would I be basing my decisions around home fixtures? I don't know. I mean, Man City, Norwich in that second game, for example. But yeah, I mean, here's an on-the-fence answer for you. It could do. Yeah,
and I think we need to see how things start. Obviously, it's pure speculation at the moment, but you wouldn't be surprised to see home advantage back in a bigger way than ever. Just looking at some of this...
Everton, I mean, they can't...
Yeah, terrible.
I mean, you talk about the average of last season home. They're the ones that bloody dragged the whole thing down.
Well, look at the data here, right? Points per game at home, 1.16. Points per game away, 1.95.
That's unbelievable.
16% clean sheet rate at home. And I know that because I had Dina for part of that and suffered from that. You know, we looked at the fixtures with Everton and thought, oh, Dina's a great bet for this home game. Time and time again, they let us down with silly goals. Whereas away from home, 47% clean sheet rate. That's ridiculous. That's like the top. The top, along with City, Everton had the best clean sheet rate away from home.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, look at Burnley. I mean, we always look at Burnley as being this like impenetrable force at home. The worst point per game of all teams in the Premier League. That is nuts, right? And then look at them away from home. 42% clean sheets away from home. Like, what is... It's, you know, it was just a weird season, wasn't it? And I think even if we don't see like a massive turn of like suddenly home teams performing much better, we're definitely surely going to see some like restoration to normality, I'd have thought.
Yeah. And interesting, if you look at the promoted teams, I had a look at the Championship and the difference wasn't as big, right? The home advantage was still there to some extent. And you can see it in the numbers here. Watford 2.57 points per game at home, Brentford 2.04, Norwich 2.09, compared to 2.13 for Norwich, 1.75 for Brentford, 1.39 for Watford away from home. So home advantage was there in the Championship for those teams, just not in the Premier League. I can't answer that. Any ideas on that, why that would be?
No. I mean, no, I can't. It's bizarre. And, you know, if it was just like a couple of teams, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's just kind of, you know, but it's maybe it's because, you know, bigger teams are more used to having more fans. So found the, you know, the difference and the start difference to be more than they were expecting, which is probably why it didn't affect City so much.
Yeah, or maybe, you know, in the Premier League, more teams are competent as away teams, as counter-attacking teams, right? They're set up for that purpose with pace and resolute defences, whereas in the Championship it's not quite as strong, that element. What leaps out for me there is Watford's home clean sheet rate, 61%, right? And we, you know, that's something immediately we've got to consider. And I know that folk are looking at the Watford keeper as an option at 4-5, and maybe Watford defenders will come through. That's a number that really stands out though amongst the promoted teams. So interesting. With no doubt that last season, in terms of home and away form, is something which looks like is going to change, right? And we've got to study this as the season goes on, and I guess react to it. And if we see home advantage being a big factor, we need to go back and react to that. So I want
just one of it, and I just thought about intimidation as well on the things, like, you know, you're an away team going to a place like Old Trafford or Man City or Chelsea, and I guess the fans there create that cauldron, right? And it's one of the reasons why I think Liverpool struggled so much. As you know, they've always, with under Klopp, he's always that one galvanising the crowd. And okay, they obviously had the injuries, but I do think it took them a while to adjust to that, because they're more like training games at times with no.
Yeah, fans. It was weird, wasn't it? It really, and as you know, we was fed a lot of football, and it did take me a while to get used to it and to actually enjoy it. It was almost like a different brand of football that we had to get used to, and it got there. I mean, the quality wasn't as good, but we saw some good matches. We saw some crazy score lines, of course. But it's all, you know, it's going to be fascinating to see how it impacts the results and the performances, but also our impression of it as well. Whether our impression of watching matches and players are going to be changed by the fact there's suddenly fans there adding to the atmosphere. I don't know. It's all new again, which is fascinating. Exciting, isn't it? Yeah, you're getting more excited now talking about it. So this is the form table, last 8 matches. And as you see there, obviously we've got the traditional table with points at the end. Liverpool top, 20 points in the last 8 matches. Arsenal 19, Leeds 17, all the way down to the bottom to Fulham on 2 points, West Brom 5, Palace 6. But I've added an extra column, as you see. And the highlighted teams are the teams that were placed in the ticker top 10 before these last 8 matches. So in other words, these were the teams that were predicted to have the best fixtures before they played these 8 matches. And as you can see, the top 3 teams, Liverpool were predicted as the best on the ticker before those 8 matches. Arsenal were 3rd, Leeds were 6th. So the top 3 teams, performance-wise, over those last 8 games were predicted by the ticker to have good fixtures, right? And it continues, so 6 of the top 9 were all in the top 10. And the only teams who had good fixtures, Wolves, Sheffield United and Burnley, arguably are the poorest sides on show there. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, and when you look at the top kind of 10, two of the anomalies there with difficult fixtures were Chelsea and Chelsea and City. Sorry, so you can see why they outperform the fixture. It's only Newcastle really there, the kind of the big surprise. But I think this stuff is important because the fixture degree is something that I think pretty much every manager uses. Every sort of experienced player looks at and tries to work out, who's got the best fixtures and all that. But there's all this fixtures and forms debate. This is the first kind of thing I've seen which actually checking the credibility of it. And like you say, it's pretty encouraging. I mean, Liverpool being first with the best fixtures is good, right? I mean, obviously they're a top team, but it's still, that's where you want them to be if you're backing this theory.
Yeah, and going back to the Arsenal versus Brighton comparison, the guy who picked me up on that is totally right. They were ranked third on the ticker, and I should say this is the Fantasy Football Scout ticker, the only ticker, of course, the one that I built all those years ago. Basically, there are a lot of tickers, by the way, but Scout was first. Arsenal were third on the ticker and Brighton were 19th. So he was absolutely right to pull me up on that because the fixtures were massively apart in terms of difficulty according to the ticker, and therefore that explains why Brighton's defence didn't perform as well as Arsenal's, but Brighton still did perform well. As we're about to see, let's look at the defensive form over those 8 games. And as you see, I've got the ticker rank at the end, and you see Chelsea were top, even though they were only ranked 10th on the ticker. Arsenal were ranked third on the ticker with the second best defence, and Brighton, who were ranked 19th, were the third best defence. So if you look at the way the blue teams are split up here, it isn't so tightly close in terms of it kind of suggests the ticker can't predict clean sheets and defensive points as well, would you say?
That's what it looks like. It's much more spread out. I'm excited to see the offensive one.
Yeah, that's the one, isn't it? I mean, shall I get to that now?
But the question mark here is, so should we not be picking defenders based on their fixtures? Because that seems a bit of a crazy assumption to make, right? But is a kind of a thing that we could get from the end of last season. And also, do we think the beginning of the season is a fair comparison to the end of the season when there's different variables come through? So obviously there's kind of questions that you can ask, but it is definitely something to consider. I mean, I'm looking at my team, the team I'm building, and I'm ignoring like Chelsea players, I'm ignoring City players, for example. But actually their defenders might be the ones to get if the stuff on this table is right. Yeah,
I would say looking at this, that good fixtures don't help bad teams do well. If you look at this, like you got West Ham, Sheffield United were 4th and 5th on the ticker, but didn't perform brilliantly defensively. Burnley were 8th on the ticker, didn't perform brilliantly. They're in the bottom half. Tottenham were 7th on the ticker, also in the bottom half. Wolves were 2nd on the ticker, were mid-table. Leeds 6th, mid-table. So I think what this is showing me is that if we're looking at players in teams that aren't in the top 6 or elite, should we say, we can't suggest that we can't go that, okay, just good fixtures will transform their defenders into points machines. I don't think we can go with that.
Yeah.
That's what this suggests anyway. I mean, this is just 8 matches, and it's a slice of the data, and I could go back further. I didn't do it for the purpose of the show, but this definitely does create that conversation, doesn't it?
So Redditor sums it up quite nicely in the chat. He says, "When we look at the table, it's just the defensive form is based more on team's defence rather than the fixture."
Yeah.
So it's how good the defence is as a unit rather than paying crazy amounts of attention to fixtures.
Absolutely.
So that is something that we could definitely add to a kind of a black box theory for the coming season. Is given a top defence on a bad run of fixtures, how well have they done? Because I don't think we've done that much analysis into that in the past. We just assume that good fixtures are going to breed clean sheets. Yeah,
and what I tend to do over the season is keep this ticker rank column in the stats, right? So when we are looking at the last 4 matches, which we do, we last season I think we looked at last 4 tables, didn't we? I might extend that to last 6 this season. I'm going to keep the ticker rank on there so that we can track this and go, well, okay, is the ticker becoming a better predictor of defensive points? But at the moment, this suggests that you can't, recruit defenders on the basis of good fixtures and be certain of defensive returns. It is the quality of the defence. But the next table is a bit different. This is obviously attacking form last season.
That's more like it.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of blue in the top half, right? So the highlighted teams, again, are those teams who were in the top 10 for the difficulty in the ticker before these matches were played. And then if you look at this, the top 12, is it 9? Yeah, 9 of the top 12 were all in the top 10.
Yeah.
It's 8, sorry. Wolves and Sheffield United are the only teams in the top 10 who didn't figure in the top half of this attacking table. And Wolves and Sheffield United, arguably, at the end of the season, were two of the poorest teams, right? But what it does show is that, Liverpool, West Ham, United, Spurs, Burnley, Leeds and Arsenal, because they had better fixtures, performed better than the rest for those fixtures.
Yeah. I guess it's the kind of the tricky thing here, I guess, is the top teams seem to also have the best fixtures at the end of the season as well. Yeah. So look at Chelsea, Liverpool, City, West Ham are in incredible form, United, and then Newcastle, who were up there but didn't, so that doesn't support it. But Spurs are one. But then you look at Burnley, Leeds and Arsenal, and Leeds for example were almost more defensive towards the end of the season, but still right up there on this list. And then it's kind of the poorer teams down below. So I'll be really interested to see this list when sort of poorer teams have better fixtures, to see if they can then, because if they're ahead of the likes of like Chelsea and teams with worse fixtures, then I think that's when we really get a nice test. So yeah, it's really, I mean, at the moment this table completely supports that fixtures breed goals or attempts on goal. Yeah, but yeah, I'd definitely like to see more data. We definitely got to keep our eye on this next.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't conclusive. This is just a lead, really, to go. Well, actually, when it comes to attacking form, the ticker looks to be a better predictor than it is of defensive form.
Yep.
But then again, that could be down to the nature of last season and the fact that fans weren't in the stadiums and stuff like that, and away wins. I mean, City being third on this table for attacking output, so that this is sorted by minutes per XG. So they still registered 52.7 minutes per XG, which was the third best over the last 8 games, despite giving a ticker rank of 16th going into those games. That shows that elite teams are almost fixture proof, right? It doesn't, rather than show, it suggests, right, that the likes of City, we can't look at their fixtures and write them off by any means, right?
Yeah. So what we're saying is elite defences are really good and elite attacks are really good.
Yeah, it seems bleeding obvious, but when you see it like this, and it kind of reinforces how important it is to use the ticker at this stage in the season, because it is all we've got. We're looking at the last 8 fixtures form, but how much stock do you put into how teams and players finish the season in terms of taking that form into the new season? What do you feel about that?
City as well were just like rotation central as well, weren't they, as well towards the end of the season? So it's even more amazing that they featured so high. Yeah, to be honest, I've never done it before. I've never thought, a team finished last season quite strongly, and so I'm gonna bet the players. But I did do the reverse. I remember Leicester, finished the season particularly badly the year before last, and so I just ignored all their players. And then they had a complete turnaround at the start of last season. They were absolutely brilliant at the start, and now I'm thinking to myself, the same things happened again. They had a poor end to the season, missed out on their Champions League for the second year in a row, but they seem to be a team that has a good start to the league too. So that's almost irrespective of how they finished towards the end. So Leicester kind of tell me that they're a team that don't really obey by that kind of form rule from the back of the last season. And someone asked in the chat earlier, do we think Euros maybe the Euros is a good predictor? So players that have played in the Euros, had a good tournament there, are they going to have a bit of extra something about them, or is it so dependent on the team and the training and the pre-season and all that? It's I don't know. The one that really, really interests me is Pepe, because signing for 70 million, 75 plus million or something, and then having the rubbish season he had at the start, and then it was only right at the back end of last season. So okay, the fixtures were great, but he was performing to a really, really high standard. And Willian is kind of almost out of the picture now, and he seems to be someone who's in no teams, could be a really exciting punt that could carry on from where he left off.
Well, let's look at players, because he is going to figure on this chart. So this next table is form players over those last 8 matches. Ranked by FPL points, and again, highlighted players are those who are ranked in the top 10 for the ticker, or their team was. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And as you see, again, like there's a clear correlation between ease of fixture according to the ticker and the eventual points that they got. So much so, I think it's 11 of the top 12 all were in the top 10 for the ticker. The only player outside of the top 10 for the ticker was Iheanacho, who arguably was in the form of, well, he was in the form of his career. It's not arguable, is it? He was.
No. He hasn't had much else form to go on. So
no.
Yeah. What's really interesting about that list as well is no Man City players. So again, we talk about, elite players get the most points and elite player defences and all that. But actually, elite team, you get in City, they've got all those amazing offensive stats. Not a single player in the top 10.
But that was the rotation at play. I think in the next table, I think we see Torres appear for minutes per point. But Pepe's there. 51 points he ended the season with. And what you said is interesting because I went with Pulisic last season, week 1, on the back of the way he ended the season. So I did try and go, right, okay, he was flying at the end of the season, looked to a world beater. I'm going to have him from game week 1. So I did take that bias, if you like, into my initial lineup, and I paid the price because he was injured, and I kind of bought Lampard on his team, his team talk before in the press conference when he said he was in training and fit, and then lo and behold, he didn't turn up, did he? And he had a miserable season. So I fell for it there. I thought that his season before would be a springboard, and it wasn't at all. So there is a risk in doing that. I mean, it's like Pepe. Do you see a risk there? Do you see that the whole slate is wiped clean? It's a new season, so therefore we can't use last season's form.
Do I see a risk with Pepe? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I do, but I do. I saw something, some of these times, and I think the Pulisic comparison is a really good one because sometimes you just see something and it just look like it's clicking, and it's not just about someone having a good game or a couple of games. It's a player that's seeming to understand a system more, and the players are giving him the ball more, and he's making better decisions. It wasn't just like him just scoring 40-yard screamers like he occasionally did. His all-round play was just generally better. And I just do think that he could be a much, much stronger option this season. And now his lowest price of 7.5. In a bracket of players like Maddison and Grealish and players, but there isn't really, I don't think, a massive standout of someone that I need to get this guy. So I really like him as an option. I think the one problem with Pepe, I think, is Smith Rowe. Because for 2 million less, you could potentially be getting the number 10 for Arsenal if they don't sign someone. So I think it'd be hard to justify Pepe if Smith Rowe doesn't have any competition. Yeah,
and I think the other thing with Arsenal, and it affects Smith Rowe as well, is there is likely rotation there in starting roles. Because, I mean, they're looking at Abraham, weren't they? I saw a rumour, right? So they're looking at getting a central striker in, which means Aubameyang could end up on the flank. And therefore it shuts down one of the flank positions, and you've got Saka and Pepe already there, right? So it's difficult. I can't predict difficult. That. Yeah, there we go. Bingo. You can't at the moment. You can't have any certainty on the starting lineups because transfers are still ongoing, right? So we've got to wait for this market to settle, and it'll only be the final week where you can make that call, right?
I think if everything was as it was now, I would go so far as to say that Pepe is a good option to consider in your team.
Yeah,
but signings for Arsenal in any of the attacking areas limit it because you're just running the risk that he's not gonna start or subbed early or something like that.
Anyone else from that season form table there? Last 8 games. I mean, Chris Wood ended the season brilliantly, didn't he?
He did. Can't quite believe it, especially with the weirdness of Burnley's away and home form. I didn't realise it was that stark a difference in the same way that it was for Everton. I'm just going to say the same thing about Chris Wood that I say every year. He's not sexy enough for me. I need a sexy striker. It's just how you're going to soundbite that, aren't you? Oh, I can see it now. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I think there are so many good kind of mid-priced striker options in Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, Tony's there. You've got Abraham if he moves. I just think we can do better than Burnley offensively.
You always said it. You said this at the start of the season last season when you were on the Scoutcast, and I can't remember who it was brought up Chris Wood, and you were like absolutely scathing.
Well, absolutely sums up the season, isn't it? I say that, and then Burnley become like Barcelona and start scoring like 3 goals every match. They were. You talk about end of form seasons. Burnley were like a different team. They were so offensive. Like the attacking wise, that is something that I'm going to be really interested to see in the first few weeks. Because if in the first few weeks Burnley set up like they did at the end of last season, I'll take it back about Wood and I'll say, he's someone that we need to consider, because I'll put him in a different bracket. He won't be the striker playing for a defensive first side. He'll be the striker playing for a suddenly really offensive attacking.
Yeah, he was getting high number of chances, high XG. They were playing in much more enterprising game, and Burnley are going to come up later in the show. A bit of a spoiler, but they are. When we start looking at the fixtures and what comes out of the analysis, Burnley look all right, a bit better than all right even. Joe Willock, right? If he gets a loan move, we got to look at him again. 44 points he ended on, 8.6 minutes per point. Only Bale did better, I think. Yeah, over the last 8, incredible run. I don't. Again, the Arsenal rotation, the options that Arteta's got. Willock is another player that if he stays at Arsenal will be in the mix. But will they let him out on loan?
He feels too good for him to have had the run to the end of the season he had and then not get a chance somewhere at least. And whether that is Arsenal and being part of the squad and playing more minutes, or whether that is a loan somewhere. I think it's got to be one of those two, because he's not just going to go back to Arsenal and not feature. And he's shown too much potential. He was absolutely unbelievable. I do again though this question of form. Like, how much of that is down to him really wanting to impress on that loan move, and how much of that gets transported to his next loan? I mean, where could he go? Would he go back to Arsenal? Would he have that same hunger to impress like he did in the second half of the season? Would he be thinking, I've been loaned out again, I really thought I did enough to kind of show Arteta that I don't know, it's hard. The psychology element is interesting, and it probably differs from player to player. Again, he's one that I'd probably like to see in the first few games and see how he does, rather than jumping straight on him, even if he gets a move.
Yeah, and Liverpool fullbacks, we always talk about them pre-season, and I think Trent is, I said at the top of the show that nothing's definite yet. Trent in my team is absolutely definite, right? Robertson, though, I've seen I'm starting, we talk about the Twitter bubble, I'm starting to see a movement towards 2 Liverpool fullbacks again. Are you seeing that?
I am indeed, and I had it in one of my drafts. Yeah, I mean, Jota's really popular as well at 7.5. It's just, that first game for Liverpool, I think, it's easy to look at that, and the fixtures Liverpool have got are pretty good. So I think, a lot of people wanting to triple up on that makes sense. So I guess it's Salah. The Mane, like we talk about prices, Mane is just a non-option, because you're going to pick Fernandes over Mane. I'd imagine if you go for all three, you're gonna really suffer the rest of your squad. So I think it's Trent and Salah, and then one of Robertson, or Jota if you're going to do the triple. I mean, Robertson though, it was this is the other, I keep saying this is the other thing, but I mean it is on this form question, because we said all of last season, this is Trent playing at probably the bottom of his capacity, and this is Robertson playing at the absolute top. But Robertson has just carried on. He was fantastic at the Euros again. And same with Shaw. How many levels can they keep moving up? Maybe that isn't the max of Robertson's potential. Maybe we were wrong about that. Maybe Trent, is kind of more kind of similar to Robertson than we thought. I don't know. I could make a case for 7.5 and going for Robertson over Trent, given what Robertson's been doing over the last.
No, I think there is a difference between them. I think if we're talking about gears to go through, I think Trent has got a couple more gears than Robertson. I think Robertson is in fifth gear more often and more consistent, but Trent has got that ability to just pull a 20-pointer in a game, right, with a goal. But
he hasn't done that for a long, long time.
No, but
how much of that is kind of hopeful, and how much of that is should we just?
Well, look at this. He's top, right, with Bale. Last 8 games, 54 points. This is a fullback who did suffer his worst spell in a Liverpool shirt last season as well. I think mid-season he was shocking. And I had him in my team at that point, and I was desperately trying to fight his corner, but couldn't. He was dreadful, right, for a long period. And then he just reacted, didn't he? I mean, it was around the time that there was talk of him missing out on the Euros, which he ended up doing through injury. But he reacted in such a positive way, and he looked that special player, right? And I think Robertson's a fantastic player, fantastic captain for Scotland, and just, so consistent. And he showed that for Scotland in the Euros, right? He was outstanding. But Alexander-Arnold, I think, on a Premier League stage, has got that 1 or 2 extra gears that he might not find often, but when he does, you want to have him in your team, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Robertson is the corners. I mean, him taking the corner duty was massive. So you don't think Trent will be closer to Robertson? You think Trent's going to be clear this season of Robertson?
Yeah, I think so.
So if it's 0.5, he's going to have to be clear of him by what, 20, 30 points?
Yeah,
probably?
I think that's going to happen. I think that's going to happen. I think Trent's got a 4 or 5 goal season, and I think we take it for granted he's going to get between 10 and 15 assists now, right? And I do think his crossing ability is a level above Robertson. Robertson was getting forward more for long periods last season than Trent, and he was looking more effective. I'll give you that. But I just think when it comes to big chances created, I think Trent's got more of those in him, and he needs Mane to convert, right? I think Trent suffered because Mane wasn't ticking along at all, right? He had a dreadful season. I think when Mane and Salah are both firing, it's happy days for both fullbacks, right? There is a case for both, right? Again, that's a factor. If we see Liverpool, Mane and Salah starting well, obviously you want to get both Mane and Salah, but if you can't afford that, getting both fullbacks, who are the main source of creativity, is the next best thing, right?
Well, I favour the defensive double up at the start of the season over Jota and Salah.
Do you? Why? Do you not think Jota's going to get starts then? That's the interesting thing, isn't it?
I feel exactly the same about Jota as I did last season. I don't know what Liverpool's strongest team is, and there's a strong part of me that thinks Jota isn't in it. I still think Firmino is the one, and it was interesting that Klopp did end up using all of them. When I think about halfway through the season or something, and it was quite effective. But Wijnaldum's gone now, absolutely vital part of how Liverpool play. So there's going to be a change in Liverpool. I think there's going to maybe a shift in system or something. I don't think he can play all 4 of them regularly. So I think it is either Jota replaces Firmino or they share minutes.
The other thing
I think it's more likely they share minutes.
Yeah, and a couple of points here as well. Jarrod Bowen linked to Liverpool today. Apparently Klopp likes him. I can't think of a more Jota-like player than Jarrod Bowen. No. He's very, very similar. I mean, the role, the way he plays, his qualities, very, very similar. The other thing is we haven't talked about when it comes to Trent and Robertson is Van Dijk. Him being back not only reinforces the Liverpool defence, also his ability to find either fullback with long passes is what Liverpool missed, right? I said this early season. They don't have Van Dijk. They've got no one to find Trent and Robertson when they go deep. But when he is there, they can make those on. They know the ball's coming because Van Dijk can deliver it. So that's another big factor.
But does he come in and get straight back to the levels of Van Dijk before the injury? Plus, he's going to have a new partner, most likely, at centre-back, who we're not too sure with Canute. So there are still some question marks around, is that partnership going to work? Is Van Dijk going to be... because we're going to talk in a bit about wild cards and stuff and what we're planning for. But normally, most of us end up playing a wild card within the first 6 or 7 weeks. Are Liverpool defence going to be that strong right at the start, or is it going to take them a while to gel? And does Van Dijk become more of an option maybe as the season progresses? Yeah,
I mean the beauty of Robertson and Trent is you hold them through bad times when it comes to clean sheets to an extent because returns are there with attack, unlike other fullbacks. I mean Luke Shaw, Dina. They could get there, but then I don't see either of them getting to Trent and Robertson levels.
Both of them are level.
So
above.
when if we go Shaw and he doesn't get assists or clean sheets, we're looking to sell probably. He's at a good price, but we probably would look to sell, right? Whereas Trent and Robertson, you would probably hold them because if they don't get a clean sheet in the first 4 or 5 games, they're probably going to chip in with 2 or 3 assists anyway, right? So that'll be enough to keep them ticking over. Whereas when they're doubling up, when they're getting cleans and when they're getting assists, that gives them free bonus when they get an assist. It really does all come together in a perfect storm, doesn't it? But I don't know. I think what I saw looking at the ticker relative to team form, it underlined the obvious, which is if a team that's strong has got good fixtures, go as big as you can.
Yep.
And when we look at the fixtures later, that is effectively Liverpool, right? So I think it's, free Liverpool will probably be the way I go in the end. Let's look at minutes per point, form players. And again, look how many players in this table are highlighted in blue, as in were rated in the top 10 for the ticker. I think it's there's 30 players shown here. 19, I think it is, are highlighted as having good fixtures, right? So again, there's an obvious correlation, it appears, but this is just a small sample. Rodrigo, right? Now, I've seen Rodrigo talked about pre-season. Do you think, as well as the Rafinha price, that Rodrigo is a problem for people looking at Bamford?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
He ended the season really well, didn't he?
Ended the season really well, and Bamford was getting subbed way more than he was at the start of the season. And part of it is kind of, how much of that is, Leeds were safe and wanted to experiment. Rodrigo hadn't played a huge amount throughout the season and to try that. But at the same time, Rodrigo's really good and played really well. And I do wonder if Bamford if that kind of theme is going to carry on, which is why I think 8 million for Bamford is just not worth it.
Yeah.
And it's why when you had him in your team that I saw yesterday, that's why I really wanted you to show it, because I couldn't believe you'd gone with Bamford in a
I've
draft.
taken him out. I love Patrick, though. I want to pick him.
So do I.
I think what the appeal he had to me before these last 8 games, or the last few games when Rodrigo came good, was I thought he was, Bielsa was so loyal to him, and he played on when he was injured as well. Patrick was struggling at part of the season. I remember the Fulham game, he wasn't himself. He still got a goal. So I look at Bamford and think he's a regular starter, will play when injured, and he chipped in. He had a fantastic season. 8 million's worth it. But then when you factor in Rodrigo ended the season with 33 points, and he's top for mins per point, so a point every 6 minutes, that gave Bielsa something to think about. And Rodrigo's not going to be happy playing that bit part role next season, is he?
Well, I think Bamford will still will still have Bielsa's faith, because I think he had a bit of an injury, didn't he? He was able to experiment a bit more. I think Bamford starts as Leeds number 1.
Yeah.
But I think now there's that element of Bielsa which is like, okay, when things aren't going our way, Bamford doesn't get the 90. Maybe I do switch things, and maybe Bamford is one of the first players that comes off. And that's very different to how he was in the first half of last season. So and also, can Bamford go on again and have another 15, 16 goal season? I'm a little bit sceptical.
I think he can. I think, to be fair, I think one of the main reason he was subbed off as often in the end and didn't start the final game was the hip injury. Was it the hip? I think it was hip that he had the problem. He had an injury he couldn't shake, right? Yeah. Clearly. And it remains to be seen if he's going to start the season with that same problem, and it's going to curse him a bit. Because, he played on, he was fit enough to start games, but clearly as the game wore on, it restricted him. And that's why Rodrigo was given the platform to perform, and he took his chance. So if Bamford is perfectly 100% fit and firing, maybe it will revert to Bielsa's favourite. And Bielsa's not one to rotate, so maybe there is still stock in Bamford. But with Rafinha at 6'5", it's really, Harrison at 6. It's difficult, isn't it?
Difficult thing.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, well, I think it's not. I don't know why you wouldn't go for Harrison or Rafinha.
Yeah.
When I just think Bamford isn't this 6 million striker. He's now in this kind of like quite expensive bracket where he really does need to get sort of 160, 170 points to justify that. And there's just more of a threat around him, and the fact that his teammates, who I think could get close to that tally as well, are significantly cheaper.
Okay, another name here, further down this table, 9.6 minutes per point, Cavani. Now, we're all kind of talking about Bruno, who doesn't show up on any of these tables because he had miserable end-of-season form, didn't take any form into the Euros, and didn't show any form in the Euros because he didn't get many starts, surprisingly, for Portugal. Cavani is a viable option, right? If United don't sign a central striker, which you presume they will, but they may not, Cavani's there, isn't he? And I'm seeing him popping up now in terms of, well, I'm going to go without Bruno, and I'm going to go with someone like Grealish, and I'll have Cavani up front. And obviously Sancho hasn't arrived yet. We'll talk a bit about him in a minute. But Cavani, what do you think to him? No, you're not doing it. Well, do you not think that?
No way.
Okay, so if they don't sign a striker, you didn't think he'd be a regular starter. I mean, Rashford is not in the equation, is he? Right? If he gets surgery, which we think he will.
Well, no, but I mean, there's Martial there and there's Greenwood.
Yeah.
And I think Greenwood's one of the reasons they're signing Sancho, I think, is to give Greenwood more chances up front.
Right.
Because I think Martial has lost the faith. But I mean, he can play there and he can play on the left. Cavani is going to feature. Cavani will get, I don't know, he might play half the minutes possible, something like that. But is that enough? Like, I'd much rather have someone like Watkins or Antonio or Calvert-Lewin or someone who I know is like the main player in that team, rather than a bit part Man United striker.
Yeah,
it's for me. It's no.
Yeah,
way.
you don't want that anxiety with the team sheets, do you? So, no, I totally get that. I am tempted to go. Yeah, I'm going to go there. Havertz, right, further down the list.
Great player, always said it.
You have, haven't you? You've always been his biggest fan.
Absolutely.
Sunday,
I genuinely have always been his biggest fan.
No, I know. Trying to get another soundbite out of you. Big seasons for him. Big seasons for him and Werner, right? The two German imports came with massive reputation. I fell for Werner early on, got rid of him after a few weeks after he let me down at the captaincy. Got off quickly, and thankfully I did. But Havertz came good, didn't he? Towards the end of the season, he looked like the player we thought Chelsea had bought. He showed class. I think he still has that tendency to drift in and out of games, but this is a huge season for him. Thoughts on Havertz?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the things against him last season. Young, new league, he had the COVID, new system, change of managers. Loads of things happened, that can obviously disrupt someone. But then, towards the end of the season, just started to... I think you're right. He did start to he did drift out of games, but he also was much more integral in Chelsea winning games than with his link-up play and he was absolutely fantastic in the final. My thing with Havertz, and I said it on I've said it on a couple of different things now, is I just don't see him as being that like 200+ point player, and I guess you don't really need that from him when he's 8 million.
No. He's 8.5, is he 8.5?
8.5, is he 8.5? Yeah, I mean, his role in the team is going to be really interesting. So if they don't sign a striker, so if they don't go out and get Haaland or someone, Werner isn't going to be trusted to play up front. So it's going to be Havertz at false 9, I would have thought.
Yeah.
So if he plays there, then I think for 8.5, he's a really strong option, a good way to tap into the Chelsea attack.
Yeah.
But they need a striker. They need one. I can't see why they wouldn't go out and just buy a striker. And if he plays in the kind of 10 or on the right or a bit behind, I don't think he's going to he'll hit a numbers to justify the price.
I'll tell you why they might not buy a striker, because they're not the only ones looking for one, and the other team looking for a striker is City, and Torres is here, 9.3 minutes per point end of the season. Looked superb, didn't he? Almost to the point where he was going to get in the starting lineup for the Champions League final. Didn't quite work out for him, but he was fantastic last 3 or 4 games when Pep rotated. If City don't get a striker, we've got to look at Torres, haven't we? I think he's 7.5. Is he 7.5? I think that's the price. I'll have a quick check, but I think that's the case. What do you think about that? Because, I mean, you talk about, well, if Chelsea don't get a striker, I'm going to look at Havertz. If City don't get one, we've got to take notice of Torres, right?
Yeah, Torres or Gundogan, I think, both at 7.5, because one of them is likely to play in that role. Torres is...
He's 7 million,
great.
In fact. 7 million, Torres.
7 million, yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just that security of starts with Torres. It means I probably do prefer Gundogan, because he's going to play. I want, because I mean, Sterling's been played there before. Gundogan could play up there. I mean, De Bruyne can play kind of at false 9. So it could be De Bruyne and then Mahrez and Sterling, for example. And then where does Torres come into that? So I still think, even if they don't sign a striker, you're still going to have that worry each week, which is why I like Gundogan. But for 7 million, you could almost say it's worth the risk. If De Bruyne's injured and for the start of the season, and they haven't signed a striker, and they've got Norwich in Gameweek 2, yep, I'd be very tempted.
Because the thing is, you can take a risk on a £7 million player, right? It's not a heavy hitter. You're not getting out Bruno to get De Bruyne for that game. You'll be able to get a mid-priced midfielder out for Torres. So
Jesus is there as well, but how much of a factor is he? Is he at the Olympics?
I'm not seeing him in many teams. I'm not sure about his status for Olympics, but yeah, he's not really tempting people, understandably, is he at all? So just to sum up, in terms of form, what percentage do you think the end of season form will influence your initial lineup?
10%.
Because if we're looking at the Euros, we haven't mentioned Sterling, right? He was, in many eyes, player of the tournament for England. In the select 11 as well, quite rightly. I haven't seen him in any teams, right?
No.
Is that because of the Pep thing? Is that because we're not sure on the status of how those two are working out?
Yeah, I think that's the difference between looking at end of season Premier League. So someone like Pepe, who we think Arteta's starting to trust more and more and more, and looking at Sterling, like just because Sterling's gone off and Southgate's put his arm around him and said, "You're our key player," does that mean he's going to go back and Pep's going to be like, "Oh, I was wrong. You are amazing. Let's put you straight back in." Don't know. Kind of. There's a bit more to it than that. So I do think Sterling is a really interesting one though, because the premium's so set. Like everyone's just gone for Salah or Fernandes. Kane's in a couple. Having 3 is difficult. De Bruyne will probably come into the reckoning at some point. And then there's Salah, and then there's Sterling. So if Sterling does start the season really strongly, maybe say gets a hat-trick against Norwich, I wonder how that's going to shift things and whether people have... Because I think there's now this thing around Sterling, which is he can hurt me. Whereas Salah, Fernandes, Kane, you're going to... They don't hurt you, right? They're just so consistent. They just get you points every week. But we know from Sterling now that he can go on runs of form, where he doesn't get the points. So I wonder how much that's going to factor in for people. And if people are brave and look past that, they might get rewarded.
He just didn't do it last season, though. And I think one of the reasons why last season the template was so settled was because Sterling and De Bruyne weren't really factors, right? Aubameyang disappointed as well. So we had heavy hitters there who didn't turn up to the party, which meant that you could just settle on Kane, settle on Son, Bruno and Salah, right? 3 of those, you're done, right? You're never going to get that dilemma of, should I move Bruno to Sterling, Bruno to De Bruyne, really? De Bruyne flirted a bit, but he never did quite enough, did he? So
poor season, FPL.
Yeah. We need that, though, don't we? I mean, prices are one thing, but we need those players to be a factor, right? And yeah, they were never going to make Sterling less than 10 million. They've made him 11, right? It's expensive. But he's capable of justifying that price if he can become the player he was a couple of seasons ago, right?
Yep. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, and I think if he hit... I mean, whether he will hit the ground running is tricky because, he's been off with England. He's had... we won't have had a pre-season. He won't have played for a while. Does he start game week 1? Even if he was fully fit and ready to go? I don't really know. So it's that Norwich game. There could be a chance there. If Sterling's back and fit and ready to go and, maybe City don't perform that well against Spurs, he could come straight back in for that game. Then he could be quick, but I think you'd have to be pretty brave.
Yeah, very brave. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to go there yet. I've got too many memories of Sterling letting me down, unfortunately. Right, let's move on to fixtures then. We've talked about form. We've talked about the effect of the ticker on form, and we suggest that there is a strong correlation between certainly attacking returns and strong fixtures. Now, if you're looking at fixtures, there's an account you should be following. You may have heard of this guy, Ben Crellin.
Who?
Yeah, you should be following him. In fact,
dabbles, right? Dabbles.
He does dabble, and one of the questions that when we were looking for our apprentices, one of the questions was, do you know who Ben Crellin is? And if they were like, look blankly and went, is he a right back for Sunderland or something? We're like, no, that's fine. You don't know your FPL.
You're in.
Yeah, you're in. Because if you play FPL, you should know who Ben is, and you should follow at Ben Crellin, right? He has done already. I mean, it's amazing. Like he's already got busy on the basis of the early fixtures. He comes into his own on the double game weeks, right? But what he has done already with the graphic that we're showing is he's kind of predicting where they're going to fall, right? I mean, you've been looking at this in a bit more detail. Over to you, Az. What have you got to say about this?
I was going to say, I don't believe Crellin is a real person. I still think he's someone that you've built in your shed and, you wheel him out when the season starts to do these double game week predictions. I mean, I spent quite a long time looking at this and firstly it hurt my brain quite a lot. It's very colourful, which is nice. But the key takeaways from it are chips and when the chips are going to be used. So game week 30 looks like it's going to be very, very likely to be a blank game week, a big blank game week, and then a big double game week in 36. So thinking about chips again, it looks like chips are going to be once again used at towards the end of the season. Obviously that can change with different things, but again, if maybe you're new to FPL or anything, it's just another reason to maybe keep your chips until the end. But yeah, I mean, there's loads. I mean, look at the research that goes in this. I mean, the international breaks as well. So we've got those in there. So we've got that sandwich between game week 3 and game week 4, and then again between game week 7 and game week 8, and then obviously the cup stuff starting. So yeah, to me, it's mostly about looking at when my chips are most likely going to be used, and considering that my free hit normally gets used in a blank game week, it's probably going to be used in game week 30 again.
Yeah, and what's interesting, last season we had the wild card, and one of the reasons why why I kept the wild card till late, I played it in 16, because we knew that we were going to have the blank and then the double immediately, right? So I used it to kind of set up for the bench boost for the double. We haven't got that this season, so we're kind of back to the default of, the preference for the wild card, the first wild card, and we've got to use it before 20, is to play it early, right? And that's where the international breaks obviously get discussed, because the international breaks give you a bit more time. Prices move quite a lot. You can play the wild card and maybe earn a few quid on the team. Doesn't always happen. I mean, very rarely happens, but it's a nice idea. So game week 3 and 4, people will play the wild card then, and game week 7 and 8, people will play the wild card then. And I've got some research later that shows what I favour there. 11 to 12 is an option too. So what you're looking around those times are fixture swings, right? And what we mean by that is that's when teams that you've backed previously suddenly have a swing in the difficulty of their fixtures, and other teams that you've not looked at with your initial lineup come into play with more favourable fixtures. And as I said, later on, we're going to show you something which reveals
chart,
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Got a lovely chart.
Interesting that there is some chip play for 17 and 18, because there could be a blank there, right? Or some, when we say a blank, some teams missing fixtures, right?
Yep.
And that's the Club World Cup, which affects those games,
yeah, that's
basically.
It. Yeah. It does, and I mean, well, African Cup of Nations as well, right? Is going to be huge. 9th of January to 6th of February. Like Krellin, like Ben's. I keep calling him Krellin. I feel a bit. Ben, sorry, Ben. Yeah. So again, I mean, this particularly the Cup of Nations for Liverpool has massive implications because they're going to lose Salah and Mane and Keita as well. And no Wijnaldum. So is Keita going to be more a factor? There's also rumours they could lose Henderson, like on to a transfer. I refuse to believe they're going to lose their captain because of like a contract dispute, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. So what Liverpool going to do? And you talk about players like Bowen coming in. That's why they're having to sign someone like that.
It is
because they need the coverage when this all kicks off. I mean, some of the other players going. I mean, Ivory Coast are losing Zaha, Morocco are losing Ziyech, Aubameyang's going to go, Mahrez is going to go. Like that, straight after we get our second wild card, we're suddenly going to have to deal with some big players leaving, and so I think wild cards are going to be maybe played by quite a lot of people quite early on. Yeah,
I mean, you could save it for 1920 and play it then with the African Cup of Nations in mind, because obviously when players depart, it gives opportunities for others. So if Mahrez is going, you've got to think Sterling starts every game while he's away and that kind of thing. Jota as well will be a player that we talk about. But then if you take Salah and Mane out, what are Jota's prospects? So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting twist that we've got to consider. And when we're looking at the whole season and we're planning what we're going to do at the top level, the African Cup of Nations is a new twist to it. But I do think the early wildcard is back on this season for me and others, because we don't have that promise of the blank and the double that we had to factor in last season. So, I always enjoy playing the wild card early. What's your track record with that?
I always claim that I'm going to leave it for as long as I can and then end up playing it really early because my team's a mess. I think probably around where we're looking to play it, around 7 and 8, would maybe actually be quite late for me to play. I think I'd normally play it sort of around.
So you'd go with 3 and 4, would you?
Yeah, I think I played it. When did I play it last year? I played it during an international break last year. I don't think it was as early as Game Week 3 or 4. I think the international break's a bit earlier this year. Probably around Game Week 5.
Yeah,
I think I played it last year.
I think there was one there, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to hold it at 7 and 8 because I think, like you're going to talk about with your planner, that seems to be when there's some good fixture swings. So that's what you're looking for. International break is great to play a wildcard anyway because you've got longer and injuries and price rise and all that stuff. If you can swing that with fixture swings as well, it's ideal, really.
Yeah, I think last season I was too set on saving it for the bench boost, and it didn't work out at all. And I got rid of some good players as well. I mean, Martinez is the one I had Martinez in my team. Took a while to come round to him. I got him in, did well for me. And as soon as the wildcard came along, in came Pope for the double, and then the double didn't materialise. And then I never got Martinez back, and it absolutely crucified me. I think him and Kane and Son were the players.
Was there some element of COVID to do with that, though? That's the other thing as well, was, last year holding on to your wild cards and your chips kind of helped you because you were always trying to work out when COVID was going to hit and when games were going to be postponed. There's more double game weeks. We had so many double game weeks last year. We're not going to get that again.
No.
Well, we might do. Who knows? Cases are rising. It could easily happen. But I'd like to think that we're not going to have such, crazy things going on. So yeah, I think we might see a bit more normality restored with.
You'd hope so. So I think we can play the wild cards early, but it's always nice to play it, not only to strengthen if you start badly, you want the wild card to revive your season, but also you should use the wildcard from position of strength to seize on opportunities, and that is where the fixture swings come in. And I missed that. Like, one of my mistakes was not. I remember Josh from Always Cheating. He was on. Remember, we were on the FPL show, and he was coming on the show remotely, and he was playing his wildcard going into the. I think it's the Spurs West Ham game, and he was going, I'm doing really well, but I want to get Son and Kane in, and he did, and we were like, oh, that's a bit. Would I play the wild card just to get Son and Kane in? We were like poo-pooing it. Son and Kane ripped it up, didn't they? Absolutely. In about 20 minutes. So I was like, oh, I've got to eat that humble pie. No. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm looking at this season, is looking at the wild card and going, right, even if I'm doing well, if I see opportunities with players or fixture swings in particular, I want to go for that. I want to go for it.
Unless it's in defence, like our table
well,
says.
maybe not for defenders, but certainly for attackers. Okay, so we talked about it. The Fantasy Football Scout ticker is kind of my go-to ticker. It always has been, and it will be for this season as well. Of course, there are others out there, and we're going to show a couple of other tools in a minute that are out there producing fixture stuff. So this is the first 19 game weeks that we're showing now, and the reason why that's relevant is because you've got your wild card going into game week 20. You must play the wild card, the first wild card, before game week 20, right? So you've got 19 game weeks to consider, and it's like, where does the wild card sit in this? And looking at this, obviously over the first 19 game weeks, every team plays every other team, but the variance is the home and away, right? And right now this is sorted by difficulty. Arsenal at the top, right? They have apparently, according to the Scouts fixture ticker, got the strongest first 19 fixtures. Liverpool are second, and that's what we talked about. It's like Liverpool just stand out, aren't they? I mean, if you look where City are, they're right down there, sixth and bottom. You never write them off because they're a great team and they're going to overcome the fixtures, but Liverpool, it's difficult to ignore them, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially if you're putting more credence on home form being, getting more of a factor, because that's, like you say, this is what it comes down to. And actually a lot of this is interesting from more of a football perspective rather than a purely FPL perspective, because you've got the wild cards. We're probably going to be playing much earlier than 19, and what the team that really interested me here is Palace, like right down the bottom, because obviously they've got Vieira coming in, they've lost half their squad. This says to me that he could not have a harder job.
Well, look at that start right up to game week 8. Chelsea, Brentford okay, right at home. You've got to look at that as a must-win, because what's to follow? West Ham away, Spurs at home, Liverpool away, Brighton at home, Leicester at home, Arsenal away. I mean,
he could be sacked after game week 3.
I think, I know. And you don't want that, but if I was Vieira, I'd be worried, right, about how to, because I think he's going to be quite. He's talked about getting players in who create chances so they can score goals. He's talking like he is going to be turning Palace into a more open attacking team, which is welcome, because I want Eze and Zaha to be factors in our season. But we're not even going to look at them for the first 8 games, because look at that fixture list.
Well, my impressions of him are that he's a man manager rather than a kind of a tactician. And he's going to be working a lot with younger players. He's going to be doing that. But that very much relies on him being given time to work his magic and to get these players bought into the system he wants and things. He's going to need to hit the bloody ground running to be able to get time. That Brentford game is like a cup final, game week 2 for Vieira. It's ridiculous. He absolutely has to win that. I'm convinced. Yeah,
because Brighton at home for any other team might be an okay fixture. For Palace, it's a derby, right? Anything can happen, and you've got a bet with them recently at Selhurst Park, haven't you? So I think that's a difficult game as well. It's grim for Palace fans, and we're not considering their players at all. Leeds down there, I mean, they have got that block of blue, and what I want to talk about is these blocks, right? Because what I wanted to do in the pre-season is to look at this ticker, look at other tools out there, and we're going to look at Tim Bayer's work in a minute. Tim, who's a friend of the show, contributes some graphics to episodes last season, has done a couple of things I want to look at. But what we're looking for in this ticker is blocks of blue, right? These are where teams have a run of favourable fixtures that, as FPL managers, we've got to look to capitalise on. And Leeds have got that, haven't they? From game week 5 through to game week 10. Newcastle, West Ham, Watford, Southampton, Wolves, Norwich. If you're not on Leeds to begin with, you need to be transitioning your team over to get some Leeds cover, right?
Yeah, so who kind of are the options then for Leeds? I mean, you've got Meslier in goal, had a bit of a price hike, but scored like a 5 million goalkeeper last season. A lot of people are going for Eiling. Loads of love coming back for Eiling. I can comfortably say he was a nightmare when I had him, but the stats
Oh,
were
so frustrating.
good, so frustrating.
Do you remember that when we were like, oh yeah, we looked at some data, didn't we? We compared Ayling to Dallas after about 7 or 8 games, and we were like, this is, you've got to admit when you're wrong, right? And we were so wrong. We were looking at the data going, yeah, Ayling is definitely the better player. I mean, at that point, Dallas hadn't really shown up. And the data did suggest Ayling was getting forward more and providing more contribution to the attack. But then Dallas just went crazy, didn't he? Gangbusters, and made us look very silly.
I mean, Ayling was a little bit unfortunate because he did get moved over to centre back for quite a lot when they had quite a few defensive injuries, and I think he would have scored more points if that hadn't happened. But Dallas is something we haven't talked about yet. What do you think about Dallas as a 5-5 mid?
Yeah, I think if Rafinha wasn't 6'5", he'd be in a lot more teams. Yeah, I mean, what did he get? 8 goals? Crazy contribution, wasn't it? I mean, I love him as a player as well. I mean, when I had him briefly for the end of the season. I really enjoyed owning him because he's always prone to get forward and hovering on the edge of the box, and he's got a shot on him. He's just a good player. All-round game is exceptional. So I enjoy watching him because he's always likely to give you that potential for points. Like he's one of those players who makes you think, I can get something out of this game, because he's always consistent with his performances. Rarely has a bad game, and is always linking play and joining the attack. Yeah, it's odd that he's not in more teams, isn't it? But I guess it's Harrison at 6, Rafinha at 6'5", right?
Well, Harrison's 0.5 more, scored 11 points less than Dallas. So Dallas got 12 clean sheets, so that's 48 points. And so Harrison would have got 12, so that's 36. So you take away 36 off Dallas, and Harrison outscores him by enough to warrant that extra 0.5.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
and that relies on Dallas having another unbelievable season with those 8 goals. Where
and plus, a point I want to raise when you mentioned Meslier, right? I think Meslier is a really good option, because one of the reasons why Meslier is a really good option is Dallas is no longer a defender. So Dallas is not taking bonus points away from Meslier on a clean sheet anymore.
Great point.
Right? So when Leeds keep a clean sheet last season, if Dallas did an attacking contribution, bang, 3 points, right? I don't know how many times that happened. When we look at goalkeepers, I will research that. That's not going to happen next season. So Mellier's, lost one of the key threats for bonus on a clean sheet there. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's a really good point. I think Meslier is a great option. I think he's a great option from game week 5, though. And that's, if you think we're probably going to be wildcarding, 5, 6 or 7, it means if you get Meslier in from the start, he's going to have United, Everton, Burnley, Liverpool in the first 4. And the other thing with Leeds is with Meslier at 5 is we've basically had confirmation now that Henderson's United number 1 and he's 5 as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's still a part of me that prefers Meslier though, because he's going to make more saves. Yeah. And we saw at the end of last season that Leeds can defend really, really well.
Yeah.
So I'd actually expect Meslier to do better than he did last year.
What Leeds became at the end of the season was a team that still conceded shots from range, still gave their keeper save points, but didn't concede big chances that would be converted into goals. I think they did ride their luck a bit, but there was a suggestion towards the end that, there was no suggestion. Bielsa did change his tactics to make them more solid, right? So, I'm almost reserving judgment on Leeds. I probably will go with one Leeds player to start with, but I don't know what I'm going to get. Am I going to get the Leeds that started last season, or am I going to get the Leeds that finished this season? Because they are different, very different. And
Rafinha's interesting as well, because he only got 133 points. But you always felt he had that potential. He's one of those players who's just a bit like Trent. You wouldn't be surprised if he came away with an 18, 19 points, because he's that good, that involved.
He never did it
in everything. But he never did it.
He never did it. As I had him, and I had him. Remember the captaincy I had on him when he had the Wolves. He had the double game week, and the first game was at Wolves, and he said, was it 6 big chances created or something ridiculous? And he got 3 bonus from
surely it's coming.
Nothing. I know. I kept saying
Brighton are going to win the league, and Rafinha's going to be top point scorer.
He was so infuriating because he's a lovely player and he does so much in a match to get hauls, but never. I think he got 1 double figure haul, which was ridiculous. So I probably will go for him, but
I was going to say, out of those 3, then Dallas, Rafinha, and Harrison.
Yeah,
Would you pay the extra for Rafinha?
Yeah, I probably would. Because he just seems more like, it's the set pieces as well with Rafinha. Like he was, Phillips will take some of them back off him. There was a spell when Phillips was out and Rafinha really did just indulge himself in every set play, and when Phillips came back, it got split a bit more. So I want to study that and see how much of the set pieces Rafinha was getting. But his dead ball delivery from free kicks around the box was really good. The Wolves game, case in point, Cooper missed 2 sitters, didn't he? Yeah, I like Rafinha. He's one of my players. If you say, when you claim ownership of a player, goes, it's like Kane. I see him as one of my players that I'll gravitate towards over others. He's one of them.
The last player to mention is Firpo. So he's coming at 5. He's a bit more expensive than like Eiling, but for all accounts, Barcelona have just had to have this fire sale because they're just so in debt and they've lost everything. Like, he's not a player they would have wanted to lose. Really attacking. I think he's worth the extra on Eiling. I still don't think Eiling is ever going to be, going to be an amazing fantasy option. I think he's going to be decent value for 4.5. But I think if you really believe in Leeds and really want to tap into that defence, I think paying the extra 0.5 for Firpo over Eiling is worth it.
I mean, I want to see him, and I want to see him how he sells.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? One thing that makes me optimistic about him is I rate Bielsa and the team behind Bielsa in terms of judging players. Because I look at Rafinha and I look at Llorente as well. We haven't talked about Llorente at 4-5. And towards the end of the season, Llorente looked a player. I mean, so I think their acquisition team are sound at Leeds. They don't sign Duff's players, right? So I think they've got another gem here, probably, in all likelihood. But I want to see it for myself first.
Yep.
So, yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's one ticker. As I said, Tim Bayer, who puts out graphics on Twitter, there's his address there, at TimBayer93. He's done a couple of graphics looking at clusters of fixtures that were favourable. And it's rated by the most recent games are given more weighting. So Brighton at the top. This is basically defensive returns, potential for defensive returns. So this is teams up against teams that created less than 1 XG per match, right? Brighton at the top, Liverpool second, Leicester third. You can discuss the ratings, but what's important here is that it's another source of information that we can consider, and it's one that I took in, and it's an interesting way of presenting the data as well, giving more recent fixtures more stronger weighting, because obviously we don't know really what form these teams are going to have, and that's what we should say about a ticker. When we're separating fixtures and form, they do overlap, because a ticker is influenced by the ratings that you give to teams, and that is based on form, right? So they speak to each other, and they are intrinsically linked. And the same goes here. Tim has rated the early games, given them more weighting, because he's not, he can't be absolutely convinced on the form of each of these teams going in. So, what's interesting here for me is just those clusters and identifying things like I talked about there with Leeds, is that cluster from game week 6 to 10, right? You look at that and you can see it. You can see there's a cluster of favourable fixtures defensively. One team that stands out for me here is Chelsea. Look at that spell between 8 and 11. That clearly is a period where you would target Chelsea for clean sheets. So that's what got me thinking. He did the same for attacking returns. Liverpool top of that. Again, it underlines why I think we should go as big as we can on Liverpool. And again, you can look at the clusters, and that Chelsea cluster is there again between 8 and 11. Clearly, they're a team to invest in at that time. So the scout ticker and tickers elsewhere, and Tim's work, and Legomani as well. I should mention Legomani, who's a brilliant account to follow if you're looking to analyse fixtures. He did this fantastic hop-on, hop-off graphic, which I can't show because it wouldn't fit in the panels that we've got. It was quite highly detailed. But what he was showing is similar to Tim. He was kind of showing where teams have good fixtures and bad fixtures, and when you should invest and get off their players, right? And it kind of inspired me a bit to do my own chart, right? So what I've done is I've put together something a bit inspired by Legomani's graphic, a bit more simplistic, which is based on what I saw in all the tickers that are out there. And what I'm showing here is kind of like bars of green are obviously favourable runs, and the strength of that run is based on how dark the green is, right? And then you've got red runs or pink runs here that are runs where we should avoid that team or sell the players of those teams. And what this enabled me to do is to spot the spells and the swings, right? And we talk about fixture swings a lot when it comes to the wildcard. We've mentioned it already. And what immediately jumps out to me here is there's a spell in the middle between 7 and 10, 7 and 11, where there's quite a lot of red bars here, as in teams that have difficult runs. So United have a difficult run, Everton have a difficult run, Watford have a difficult run. Those are teams that are all in initial lineups, so they're all contributing players to our initial lineups. But also in that bracket in between 7 and 10. There is some dark green. City have good fixtures. Chelsea have probably the best spell of any team in the first 19 game weeks between game weeks 7 and 11. They have an amazing run of fixtures.
Green.
Yeah. Leeds have a good run between 5 and 10. And Spurs, Norwich, Southampton, these are all teams that come into the equation. So I look at this, and what this has enabled me to do is to go 7 and 8, which is what I've highlighted, and you've got the break between 7 and 8, is where, at the moment, I'm looking to play the wild card because of those swings. Any comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great take. And this kind of visualization really helps. And I think it really helps with teams like Brighton, for example. You know, someone like Sanchez or Lamptey or Dunk, whoever you get, is going to be pretty much good right up until game week 17, which is nice. Same with Liverpool as well. So the triple up, you're going to be happy with that. What I do find interesting is someone like Villa. So Villa have, similar to Chelsea, an unbelievably good first 3 games. So they've got Watford, Newcastle, Brentford. 2 of those at home. Oh, that's incredible, right? So I'm interested to know whether you think, because they then shift quite dramatically on game week 4, does that mean we should be a bit wary about them, or does it mean we should be targeting and then looking to like get rid of one? And maybe it's defence. Maybe looking at the other stuff we looked at, maybe it is the Villa defence that we should get, because if they start strongly, we expect that defence to maybe carry on even through the tougher part.
Yeah, possibly. I think if you go for Watkins or Grealish, right, one attacker, and you get a defender. The thing is, a defender, you've got the bench, right? If you play 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, you can put your Villa defender on the bench for those 3 or 4 game weeks where they have tough fixtures and bring him back in.
What about
when
Martinez?
they pick up?
Because Martinez is going to be like highest owned. He's going to be like highest owned goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's intriguing.
Not someone I've considered at 5-5, but actually the Villa's start up till 7. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was the highest scoring goalkeeper. But by how is it enough to justify him being $1 million?
Yeah, but I mean, I would counter that by going like one of Martinez's appeals is bonus points and saves. Those first 3 fixtures are so strong. Is he going to get any saves to make? That's what I would say. So I think he's more likely to make saves over the difficult run and into the lesser run, which is showing up as game weeks 8 and 13.
That seems a dangerous way to completely judge a goalkeeper, though. Surely better fixtures are still going to be more points for a goalkeeper.
It is, but you can get Target for 5 million, right, or Conser for 5 million, and I think I'm probably more likely to go there and go for, you know, one of the things you said about Brighton is, you know, look at that. They've got 2 long bars of reasonably good fixtures. And Sanchez is obviously the most popular keeper right now on Twitter. And I would say Meslier and the Backman as the Watford option would be... Is it Backman? I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah. Would be better options than Martinez for me. If I was going to go a Villa cover in defence, I probably would go one of their defenders. I'm not ruling that out. You know, I like Conser and Target. Because
the interesting thing here, for example, is like Villa and West Ham. So West Ham have, you know, looking at chart, slightly less green... first 3 and then something less good but then another screen. So like Sufa, for example, 5 million, looks a great pick, good fixtures, but they've got Europe, but you know, he's good attacking. Or do you go for Target at the same price, really attack those first 3 and then look to move him on, maybe for Sufa or bench him or whatever? Because I've got Sufa at the moment, but when I saw this, I actually thought maybe Target is better initially.
Yeah, I think I'd probably go Villa defender for the first 3, move into a Leeds defender from that point on. If you look at that, Leeds have that strong run from game week 5 onwards. And if I don't start with Aylin or Lorente, then they'll be coming in for probably a Villa defender, because if I do go with Villa. So I think, again, this enables you to kind of plan transfers, and there's always a risk. I mean, it's ridiculous because we're weeks away from the crunch period where we pick our teams. But it is useful to plan like this and look at a top-level situation and go, right, okay, regardless of who I've got in my team, these are the teams I'm going to target. Let's talk about the players. These are the teams I'm going to target. And as I said at the top of the show, this ain't going to change, right? We're not suddenly going to reassess all these fixtures and go, well, actually, Villa's first 3 are really difficult, because we're not going to see enough of pre-season to make us reassess those 3 fixtures, right? We're going to go into the season thinking Villa have got an easy start where they should exploit that with goals and clean sheets. And so so you can plan in this way, right? This is I think this is the most valuable planning to do at this point. And I think you know, I look at this and go, I've got to get on Chelsea between 7 and 11. I've got to. And if I don't play my wild card, how am I going to do that big? I could start with Chelsea players, right? I could do. But the only trouble there is you're getting on quite expensive players for fixtures that aren't that great to open the season with, and you could do better elsewhere, perhaps. I mean, what do you think about starting with Chelsea?
Well, the answer there for me, I think is probably in defence, right? Because that backs up the earlier stuff of the fixtures, fixture ticker maybe not being in it, and it's good defences, and maybe that's where going for target over super. I think West Ham are a better defensive side than Villa are.
Do you?
I do, yeah. I think I think Europe will play a factor, but I don't know. I still don't. I see Villa as having a bit of a dodgy backline with a great goalkeeper. Right. Whereas I see West Ham being quite a solid team under Moyes. So I think with that in mind, maybe it isn't worth kind of going for the fixtures. But that's the thing with that thing earlier, right? Maybe the trick is just get in defenders that you like the look of and not worry too much about the fixtures, but then target the fixtures with the attack. So that's where these two things
and I think
link up really well.
I think that's vital for me. It's not really the defence. I mean, I'm quite happy to start with Reece James, right? I may well do. I mean, there's talk of Luke Shaw being injured, I think, isn't there? He's got a rib injury, right? So if he's a doubt, I might well go Dina or even Reece James to start the season.
Or Chilwell at 6.
Yeah.
I mean, Chilwell at 6, he's got that Palace game in the first game, then he's got Arsenal away. I wouldn't be too worried about playing them away at Arsenal.
And Tuchel's team can keep clean sheets against anybody. And I think what we've seen is don't use the ticker to count out the elite teams, and we've got to put Chelsea in that bracket. They're Champions League winners, right?
There's only 2 fixtures of Chelsea in the first 6 I wouldn't want to play them in.
Yeah.
And that's the only 2 fixtures I really wouldn't want to play someone in. That's City and Liverpool. I mean, Spurs, Villa, Arsenal, Palace... I'll be.
But still, you aren't going to have 3 Chelsea players come game week 7, are you? Come game week 8.
Not unless you're wildcard.
No, not unless you're wildcard, right? So,
are there even 3? Are there even 3 that you could get? I mean, I'd argue Mount would be the pick of the midfield.
Well, I think
Havertz, and Chilwell or Reece James. I
would say we're sitting here now 3 weeks before the start of the season, and yes, I couldn't give you names. I think 7 game weeks in, I could probably give you 3 players. Well, yeah, maybe. I do think, that's enough data. We'll have enough data, 6 game weeks gone, where we would go, right, I've seen enough of what Tuchel's doing, and I know who the protagonists are. I've got enough information to get on top of Chelsea's attack. Maybe not with 2, but certainly 1.
Or the opposite, and it's mass rotation, and no one looks like a sure starter, and we don't go for any of them.
Yeah, sure. But all I'm saying is now, I look at this and go, I'm probably going to have to do something to get on Chelsea. But it's not only Chelsea. Look at the run City have got, game week 8 to 10. They've got a strong run there as well, where you want at least 1 City attacker. And again, if you don't start the season with that, are you going to book in a transfer and go, well, I'm going to move to De Bruyne? You could move Bruno out. The problem is when you start with players like Bruno, and even though United have got a difficult run from 7 to 11, as this shows, you're still reluctant, aren't you, to go, right, I'm going to sell Bruno. It's the upside chasing, right? It's what Late Riser does. He's used to it. He's used to taking those risks. But as FPL managers, getting rid of Bruno for De Bruyne, it's something, you didn't get on De Bruyne last season. You went with Mahrez and that hurt you. And I think sometimes when you've got a heavy hitter with a reputation like Bruno, if you start the season with him and he does okay, getting rid of him for De Bruyne or Sterling when City got good fixtures is not straightforward, is it?
No, it's not, and that's why I think we were kind of anti, about this whole wildcard in the possession of strength thing, because often you get burnt when you take out a player in form, and this isn't like pre-season form or regular form. By 7 weeks, we're going to know who is playing well, and if we have to suddenly rip those players up to bring in and play some rotation hit teams, Chelsea and City, the 2 biggest teams for rotation in the league. If I'm suddenly having to take out my nailed on performing players for those, it comes as a huge gamble, and it could be something that we look at game week 10 and go, why the hell did I do that?
Yeah, but I think I want to be brave with the wildcard this season. I would like to think I get the chance to play it to seize an opportunity rather than repair something that's broken.
Yeah. Prices as well, though. Taking out players who you've built value in and bringing in players who, if they don't perform, might go down in price. Yeah. There's a hell of a lot of risks that do come with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to hold you to this now.
I'm going to use this going forward. I'm going to do. I don't know whether you did this last season. As I do like an Excel sheet and plot what my team. Yeah, you should do that. Really, I should think about.
We're carrying that on. We're carrying on that joke.
Why not? I think this is going to prove the basis for that. Right? It's very. We're still weeks away, but like I said, I don't think the fixture difficulties or our impression of them are going to change that much. So this sheet will still be relevant to me at kickoff. And yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But I do think that mid-season, between 7 and 10, there is a clear swing of difficulty for fixtures for key teams that, on the face of it, we could exploit with the wild card. But who knows what's going to come up before then and how we're going to fare. It might be that our teams are in tragic state and we've got to roll it out between 3 and 4. Right?
That's exactly it, right? Yeah. That's exactly what I'm worried about, yeah.
Yeah, but we're not going to set up like that. But, I mean, like with that in mind, I started looking at the double figures allowed as well, right? This is another ticker, of course, that we introduced last season. A bit of a favourite, wasn't it, Vaz? And this
never got a name, did it?
It didn't really, and double figures allowed doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it? But I wanted to look at this, and I couldn't do 19 game weeks, so I thought, okay, with the idea that I'm going to play the wild card between 7 and 8, let's have a look at game weeks up to game week 7 and see how the teams fare. And so, for those who don't know, what this does, what I've got data on, is I look back at the previous set of matches or the previous season now, and I look at the teams that allowed double figures or conceded double figures to their opponents. And so what you're seeing on the table is Man City at home 2, they allowed 2 double figures in home matches, right? But away they allowed 6. I've actually got that wrong with Alice. If you play Man City at home, they allowed 2 double figures. If you played Man City away, they allowed 6. So actually they conceded more double figures at the Etihad than they did on their travels. And that was mainly Leicester, right? That was that freakish result. So that's how it works. And obviously we don't have data for the promoted teams because you can't really judge, double figures. We could look at the Gaffert data, and we'll look at Gaffert data in a later show, but I didn't want to do that for this. So I averaged them out. I took Leeds, West Brom and Sheffield United, the 3 promoted teams from last season, averaged out their values for double figures allowed when you play them at home and double figures allowed when you play them away. And it's 16 and 14. And I use those numbers to generate a ticker for those teams. So if we look at the double figure ticker for the first 7 game weeks, right, the team topper Burnley. So Burnley, I mean, obviously what we're seeing is the green cells are those games against teams that allowed the most double figures last season in that respective fixture, home and away. Burnley appear to have the best opportunity for double figure returns over the first 7 game weeks. Then it's Everton, then it's West Ham, Wolves and Liverpool are in there again. Tottenham right at the bottom. They're only playing 2 teams who allow, or they only have 2 fixtures which allowed double figure returns last season.
And their fixtures look good. If you look at your spreadsheet and if you look at the fixture tickers, Spurs actually look like a team to maybe jump on. But actually it's only really that game week 3 game which...
Yeah, who have they got 3 and 4? Let's just look at the scout ticker. So 3 and 4, they've got Watford and Palace. Yeah. So it makes sense. They are 2 good fixtures for them. But outside of that, they play teams or they have fixtures which last season did not allow many double figure returns at all.
So Kane, for example, if he stays at Spurs, are you really going to pay that much?
Yeah, but I mean this is so unscientific. It's a bit of fun, really. It's not data that I would base my team on, but I just wanted to do it to keep it running.
Core BlackBox spreadsheet now, it's fact.
Well, is that going to convince you to go Chris Wood then, is it? Yep. Of course it's not.
And Brownhill.
Well, Brownhill's interesting. 2 goals pre-season.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think
McNeil.
I think what this shows again is though, look, Everton are near the top, Liverpool are near the top, Newcastle are near the top. It's kind of reinforcing my confidence in some of the teams that I'm looking at. I'm looking at Wilson for Newcastle. I'm looking at Calvert-Lewin and maybe Dina for Everton, and I'm obviously looking at least 2 Liverpool players. So there wasn't anything here that changed my mind on those teams, and it didn't change my mind on I'm probably not going to go Son or Kane, right? Because I don't think they've got the best start, and obviously with the Kane uncertainty, there's upheaval. Even if he stays, I think the whole circus of his future is going to affect them early on, right? There's a chance it will. Leicester, another team down there. Arsenal, they're a team that I think will have a good spell. Maybe don't start the season too strongly, but I think they come good. The problem with Arsenal, as we've said before, is knowing their lineup. I think defensively, we know Ben White and Tierney are options, but in attack, they're probably not a team that we can bank on other than Smith Rowe, who is so cheap, you can probably have him bench, right? So yeah, I think this is a useful exercise. What you make of that and Burnley is, well, I think Brownhill is your 4.5 midfielder, right?
Do you know my biggest fear here?
What?
Chelsea game week 1. Palace with 20 double-digit conceded, and they're significantly worse, and they've got a completely unproven manager in his first game. What a time for Chelsea, the Champions League winners, to be playing Palace. That could be 6-0.
And in my mind, there's always a game in the first game week where a team is found out straight away. Like a team that hasn't prepared correctly, or a team that's had upheaval, or a team that's had behind-the-scenes problems. They get immediately put to the sword, and you go, oh yeah, I should have thought of that. Why didn't I get on that? And I do look at Palace, at Chelsea, and go, if there's going to be a rout in the first week, it's staring us in the face there, right?
Chilwell is so tempting, because if he's at wing back, he could easily hit double digits in that first week. And Reece James did last year, remember, against Brighton.
I had him, didn't I? Remember? Yeah.
Yeah.
You loved it when that goal went in.
Let me bloody forget, do you?
So we have to look at that. I mean, I'm looking at that alongside the team. This is the scout ticker again for the first 7. Watford, Wolves, Brighton at the top. There's your fodder. I mean, like if I'm getting filler, if I'm getting cheap players, those are the teams I'm going to look at. Everton, interesting, but obviously
popular.
Yeah, Elnor is Sarr is popular,
yeah.
and Sanchez. We've talked about Dunk as well.
Yeah.
What do you make of Everton, though? We haven't talked about them much. Benitez, right, going in. The narrative is more defensive. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I won't go into too much, but the Sigurdsson rumours obviously not helping pre-season preparations.
No.
Rodriguez looks like he's leaving. Could spell good news for Dean, because obviously more set pieces for him, although not fully fit. I don't think he's played yet or trained or anything, but he's nearing a return. I think Everton are going to be similar to what most of Benitez's teams are, solid and unspectacular. But I think 5-5 for Dean is a bargain.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised they gave him a price drop.
Yeah.
I thought 6 was
I think if James does leave, then the set pieces become... There is, right? If Sigurdsson's not available, then and James leaves, then...
The thing is, Benitez is under pressure, similar to how Vieira's going to be. But obviously Everton have got much better fixtures. But Everton need to... I mean, Southampton at home is... they should win that. If they don't win that, then they're going to have a lot of pressure going into Leeds and Brighton, who are good sides.
Well, Leeds, Brighton...
both of those games away.
Leeds, Brighton, Burnley aren't easy games, right?
No.
So, they are... It's a good run to start with. But if Everton start slowly, they haven't got fixtures that's going to help them go through the gears. I think they're going to be different. They need to go into these fixtures in form to win, to get results, right?
I don't think Everton are just going to come into this and blow away like the first 3 or 4 games. Like,
I mean,
people start with Calvert-Lewin and Dean.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a risk. I think even though they are blue, they're not amazing to me.
I've gone off Calvert-Lewin a lot. I mean, one thing that makes me feel more positive about Calvert-Lewin, I'm seeing rumours of Benitez targeting wingers. Let's talk about McNeil at Burnley, for example. He's brought in Townsend.
Damari Gray, I think, is close to signing.
So he's clearly gone, right, I've got myself a penalty box centre forward. I need to get him service. That tells me 2 things. One, I shouldn't write off Calvert-Lewin as an option. I should definitely consider it. It also makes me think, well, does Benitez not see Coleman and Dina as the source of crosses? Does he need to get McNeil and Townsend in to provide crosses? Which makes me think that Dina and Coleman aren't going to be as further forward as we think.
Well, he hasn't historically had really marauding attacking fullbacks, has he? That's not really been a part. Like the defence for Benitez has always been not static but solid. Yeah, and then the attack comes from the flanks. So, I mean, Townsend is surely just in to be a kind of rotation option, but with Richarlison's at the Olympics as well. But if Gray comes in. Yeah, Gray isn't like an accomplished crosser of the ball.
No, but I think he's a good signing. I think he's a bit of a jack in the box, right? He can do things. He can have a thing that turns a game with a flash of pace, and I think he's a flair player, right? Townsend's a steady player. McNeil's signed for one reason only, to provide ammunition for Calvert-Lewin. He's not. I wouldn't say he's a flair player. I think he's a consistent player whose distribution and crossing he's renowned for.
I really rate him.
Yeah. But you need a centre forward if you've got McNeil in your team, right? Yeah. And that's why Wood does okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Dumfries linked as well. Pot Noodle mentions. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Now that suggests that he is going to encourage his fullbacks to get forward, because Dumfries definitely is that, right? But I don't know. I'm worried. It makes me worried that, for me, if they get Dumfries and they've got Dino on the other side, they've got fullbacks or wing-backs that provide crosses. So why do you need McNeil? McNeil playing out wide is going to be covering the same space as the fullback. That doesn't suggest marauding fullbacks to me. So I don't know.
But you don't sign Dumfries unless you want to attack down the right. But I mean, we see it with lots of teams where they focus play down one side and maybe do that. I mean, Leicester do it, for example. Castagne's terrible when he plays on the left and much more effective when he plays on the right. And that seems to be a tactic. So it might be that Dumfries signs. Actually, that again limits Dean's appeal because maybe Dean is tasked with more defensive duties and they attack down the right.
Take it in turns,
more. If Dumfries signs, I think I'd go for him over Dean.
Right. It'd be 5 million as well, probably, wouldn't he? I don't think they'll go 5-5.
God, if they made him 5, he would be really tasty. I love.
Well, again,
the Euro. Dumfries was the one good thing I did in the Euros game.
These are the subtleties they need, though. If they put him in at 5, it makes you think. If they make him 5-5, you'll go Dino because he's proven, right? Yeah. I think.
But they haven't exactly been giving us many options, have they?
No. Chelsea are bottom of the ticker over the first 7. Yeah. But it's that Palace fixture, and when we talk about home advantage, and if that's going to be stronger, they've got Palace, Villa, Southampton in the first 7. They're good home games, right? And that's one thing we've got to consider is who are the teams with the best home games, and sorting the ticker by home matches could be something that's advantageous. And we'll look at that. We'll look at fixtures again going into the first game week, of course. And I'm sure our impression of what players we're going to get in on the basis of those fixtures will change. Shall we look at some teams? Shall we look at your team?
Go on then.
Do you want to look at yours first?
My team reveal.
No, it's a draft. It's not a team reveal. Right, Henderson's in there then for you, is he?
Yeah, I thought I'd put Henderson in. I mean, I still feel a little bit uneasy about a Brighton double up at the back. Or I'm seeing some people with free Brighton, Welbeck in there and Duncan and stuff. Lamptey is just someone that I really want to own again. I think he's
you like him, don't you?
Back in training. Yeah, I got I don't know if you know.
You mentioned him a few times last season.
He's another player, lively Lamptey. He's someone that I think could be good. I don't know what he's going to be like after his injury, but. I do like him. Henderson at 5 though. If he's confirmed as United's number 1, which I think he has been recently, then I think he's probably worth the 0.5 over Sanchez. If you've got another Brighton defender, I think if you're looking for a set and forget goalkeeper and want to vary your defence a bit more, I think Sanchez is still the one. But I like Henderson. Then I've got Trent, Dean, Lamptey, very boring. Salah, very boring. I got Son in there. I was inspired by you last night. Son is a Sancho. Kind of temporary make weight because I mean if Sancho comes in at 10 or 10.5 like we think he's probably going to do,
please be 10. It's gotta be 10.
I think 10.5. You think 10?
10.5.
I think 10.
How will they say if they make him 10.5? They're saying he's a better player next season than Son.
I know,
and I don't know if you can say that off the back of. I know he's done brilliantly in the Bundesliga, but so did Werner, right? So
I just think that
Son's just had a 200-point season.
I just think you've got Rashford 9.5, Bruno 12. Let's put Sancho slap bang in the middle.
If you make him 10, it really does put the cat amongst the pigeons. 10.5, it's like, I'll stick with Bruno, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping 10, because then I could go with something similar to this. But yeah, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, if Sancho does come in at 10, do you go from over Fernandes? And we talked about, on the Planet FPL pod with, this going for unproven players. Does Sancho fit into the same realms as Werner? Look great in the Bundesliga, great stats. Yeah. Does he come into the Premier League and just smash it? I think he does.
Yeah, but you're falling into that trap, aren't you?
I have. Yeah.
I mean, I feel the same. I don't know why I feel that. I don't know why. Why would Sancho settle and do the business when Werner couldn't?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Werner was we never really knew what his position was. Like he was often very much out on the left, but being played up front. Is he actually a central striker or is he a left winger? We don't really know. Sancho is a right winger, and that is exactly what United need. It's like a puzzle, and he's like the missing piece that United. And I think Varane is as well. I think if they get those two players, they could challenge. I think.
Yeah, I think United are set up to play to Sancho's strengths, whereas Chelsea were almost like we've got to find a place to put Werner. We don't know where to put him.
Well, exactly.
And then that was the problem, and that's why it makes me think that Sancho's got more chance of repeating some of his Bundesliga form immediately in the Premier League. But he'll need to be 10 to do that.
Yeah, getting a lot of slating in the chat for Maddison. People clearly
don't know. I don't see it either.
Well, there's rumours with him going to Arsenal. Obviously, that kills it. Well, that kills two of my players if he goes to Arsenal. That kills him and Smith Rowe. But I don't really understand why Maddison would be a bad pick at 7 million. He showed signs before his injury that he was getting into more advanced positions. He's on corners. He's on free kicks. He's playing for a Leicester team who historically start the season really well. There's question marks around Iheanacho and Barnes, where they're going to play together. Vardy's getting on a bit. Attacking wise, I think he's still the go-to option in the Leicester attack. So
if he
stays at Leicester, he's in my team locked.
Harvey Barnes. Why aren't I seeing Harvey Barnes in lineups? Because is he fully fit for the start of the season? If he is, if I think he's fully fit for the season, I'm going to look at Harvey Barnes over Maddison all day. I mean, the numbers he was producing, and you got to think like Maddison. Is he at his peak? Probably near. Harvey Barnes, is he at his peak? No, I think he's got more in him.
Well, the two question marks with Barnes are, what's he going to be like after his injury? Really nasty injury, always a risk to get a player in after that. And two, the system tweaked with Iheanacho coming in basically for Barnes. So what happens when Barnes wants to come back in? Does he drop Iheanacho? I don't see how he can drop Iheanacho after what he did towards the end of last season. So where does Barnes fit? I don't really know what the system's going to be. So, yeah.
I agree with you. I think...
People do not like this team. It's the thing. You try and present something a little bit different and talk about it, and you get ripped to shreds.
Maybe I could bring up
template exists.
I could bring up the exact team, and they go, "Oh, that's good. I really like Mark's team." No, I should have done that.
Done so well.
But the thing is, that Leicester, I think they're a wait and see. I don't think there's nothing in their early fixtures that suggests if I don't get on them early, I'm going to miss out. But it gives me the opportunity to see what Rodgers is doing, and like you say, there's question marks over. We shouldn't be questioning Iheanacho. Surely he starts and he's going to be a factor again. But I think there's doubts about, what is Rodgers going to do with the system? So
yeah,
I wouldn't go near Maddison.
No.
Watkins and Wilson. Watkins got a couple of goals tonight.
I disagree about Maddison. I think Maddison is class, and
he will eventually
show his class.
I think you're blinkered low. I think you like the player. And you're inflating his FPL potential.
I would agree with you until I saw that thing with him where he said he's working on getting more goals, and then he was in the box. He was having more shots. He was doing all the things I wanted to see.
This time last year, I was knocking Pereira, and look what happened. All right, you didn't stick with him, and you lost all those points. But
imagine if I just stuck with him all season, it would have been great. Jerry Manilow, nice team as. I'd probably only change 13 players. Cheers, mate. Right up front, Watkins is as good as it gets. I think great fixtures. Amazing season last year.
But Villa double up.
I think with the fixtures they've got, the offensive double up is on. I mean, Grealish. What happens if Grealish moves? What if he goes to City? That changes everything again. Suddenly, players like Torres and Gundogan and Foden and stuff become much bigger risks as well, but it also means they're a better team. So how do we kind of react to that? The thing with Watkins though is I still think where Abraham ends up is going to be key.
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to be between Arsenal being linked, West Ham and Villa.
Yeah.
I think Brighton. I think that's just wishful thinking now. But if he does go to Villa, then I think that eliminates Watkins. Yeah. I think Watkins is going to have to go on the left.
Yeah.
And Wilson. I mean, Wilson is someone I'm getting a lot of stick for, and probably fair enough because he's a Newcastle player, but he is everything. Like, he's everything to Newcastle.
Talisman.
Right? Absolute talisman. And I think you said it well earlier. Newcastle showed signs last season of getting the ball up more. And St. Maximin there is the difference maker. Because if he's fit to start the season, his link-up play with Wilson is fantastic. Newcastle's fixtures are pretty good. And I just like that forward who is just that complete talisman for the side.
Yeah, so, I think take Willock out, and obviously the end of the season doesn't look so good for Newcastle, so they need someone like that or Willock back, right? But I do think Bruce is going to have a job regressing back to the dull... Remember that Sheffield United away game when he played like 7 centre-backs or something ridiculous?
They lost.
And they lost, and I remember because I had McGoldrick in the game, and I was like, man, I knew there'd be Newcastle would turn up and be negative. He can't go back to that. After how they ended the season, he's shown he's got players who can get goals and give those supporters who are back in the stadium something to cheer for. He's got to do that. He's got to keep that up, hasn't he?
I think so. And you're talking about picking players with proven pedigree in the Premier League. Wilson is that. Yeah. Wilson is that.
I think he's great. Penalty taker.
He just gets goals. I know he plays for Newcastle, but he scores.
I mean, we're going to look at players more specifically, but I think in terms of involvement for his team, Wilson's like 50-60% involvement. Yeah. I mean, we've got to factor that in. And Newcastle's start to the season is fairly strong. They've got a sustained run of not really good fixtures, fairly good fixtures where you can throw 7-5 at Wilson and bank on some returns, I think. I like him. Yeah.
And the player that a lot of people have got, and he's the biggest template player I think I've ever seen, and I think has the biggest potential to flop early doors, is Tony. Ivan Toney. Playing for a newly promoted side. I know he's the talisman of Brentford. They've got a difficult first game against Arsenal. Like, what are people hoping the best case scenario for him for playing against Arsenal is? What? He'll get a goal? He's not going to get a brace or a hat-trick, surely. And if he does, going for someone like Wilson means the downgrade is on, rather than having to find a way to go up to someone else. Yeah. So I feel much more comfortable starting with 2 7-5s, where there's a lot more choice, than starting with someone like Tony at 6-5, because you've only really got Pookie to go down to. Yeah,
it depends on your formation though, doesn't it? You're going with the 3-5-2, which I might end up doing as well. I tend to favour that and go with a cheap striker. You've gone Obafemi over Davis. What are you doing? But yeah, fair enough. And yeah, if Ings moves on, and Obafemi will get more chances. Yeah, so if you're going 2 up front, it makes sense to overlook Tony, I think. I would be doing the same, but I've currently got the 3 up front. So Cancelo, by the way?
Well, I had some money left. I mean, I'm thinking...
As simple as that, is it? I
had some money left. Well, I'm thinking, to target that Norwich game, really. Getting in a player for that Norwich game, not really being too sure who's going to start offensively, and thinking Cancelo can do the job of an offensive and a defensive player. I could lose him for Chilwell, actually, and swap Lamptey out for him, just because I think I really do want to get a Chelsea player in for that first game. And then I've got Soufal there as well. I mean, my biggest mistake last year was I had no bench, and it meant I had to take hits in the first couple of weeks just to sort out problems I had with my side. And if I'm going with Obafemi or Davis, I need to make sure my other 2 players are half decent.
Yeah, and I said this on the Planet FPL pod today. I like to have a bench in the first part of the season because it enables you to take the risk on early transfers. If you've only got 11 players and you've got a really cheap bench, when the bandwagon start rolling and Sunday night you want to go, I need to get on this player, he's going up tonight, you can't do it because you're thinking, well, I can't do that because what if there's an injury and team news comes in Thursday, Friday, and then I've got 10 decent players, right? I don't want to have to start Brownhill. But if you've got someone like Kufala's first sub, now I had Souček first sub a lot, then you can go, right, I'm going to make the transfer Sunday night because worst comes to worst, if someone gets a training ground injury, I've got Souček. Whereas if that first sub is a 2-pointer, you're going to be less inclined to give yourself the freedom to go in early on the transfers. And going in early on transfers, I still think is not just a valid tactic. I think it's a really, almost not crucial, but an important tactic.
I think it is too. And I think it's why, there's lots of good 4.5 options, but a lot of them aren't necessarily players who you're going to want to have and not worry about. Like guys like Eiling, Fofana's in those, Nori, they've all got risks. They all could just not deliver points, and then you might have to take them out. Whereas at least if you've got like Soufal at 5, okay, he's a bit more of an expensive budget option, but he's going to deliver. I know that Soufal and West Ham are going to be a good pick.
Well, Soufal's got attacking returns in him, right? So it doesn't matter on the position, right? So he's a nice player to have on the bench. Smith Rowe equally, I think, is a really good. It's a bit more than you'd want to pay, maybe. It depends how much you need to pump into the 11 and what you lose by doing that. But I like the idea of having a good, effective first sub. I'm not going to talk.
It's something a bit different to get people talking, and it does.
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk much about this because it's ridiculous. It's early days, right? It's not. This is not going to be my team on. I'll say this and then we'll see. But this is not going to maybe even resemble my team on day one. I've got the Brighton double up because I like Brighton's fixtures.
You got Wilson as well.
I like Wilson. Yeah, but I've got Tony in there. I'm playing the 3-4-3, but Rafinha's on the bench as a decent, or more than a decent option to come in, right? So I've gone cheaper in midfield, but I've gone Sarr, Smith Rowe, Rafinha. I like Sarr. Watford have got a decent start, and I think the thing about the promoted teams is yes, they're a risk, but Sarr's been up before. He's played at this level before, and he's done well, right? He ended the season strongly. And I think there's no doubt he's a regular start for them. He's going to be a key threat. They've got good fixtures. And I think also the promoted teams start well normally and then start to... They get injuries or suspensions and then the quality difference starts to show around 6-7 games in, right? That's what happened to Norwich, if you remember. So I think Sarr's a good punt early on. Trent and Shaw in there. If Shaw's injured, I'll probably go Dina maybe, but I really do want Shaw because of his potential going forward as well. Any comments?
Sort of weirdly similar to mine, which is a bit strange. Brighton defensive double. So 2 defensive double ups there. Oh no, sorry, you've got Shaw, not Robertson. De Bruyne's a risk, I guess, because we're not sure how fit he's going to be. But obviously we'll get news about that as well. I mean, to me, like, I'm seeing a lot of template teams the same, and it's just that seeing people's reactions to these teams just shows why so few people want to go against the Twitter template. That doesn't mean the Twitter template is bad or wrong, but the Twitter template isn't going to be overall rank 1.
No.
So, saying to people they've got bad teams, or this isn't like neither of our teams are bad teams. They're just different players, are probably ones that you're considering. So
yeah. I reckon there's probably 4 players here that I'll have at the start. Maybe 5.
Yeah.
Means Salah and Trent aren't going anywhere. I think I will have Dunk. I like Dunk. I mean, obviously we're talking about Ben White departing, and that will affect them. But I just think the way Potter sets his team out, if Basuma stays, I'll go Dunk. And I like Smith Rowe. But the rest is all in rotation, I think. So,
how sure are you that you would go without Fernandes if Sanchez?
No, I'm not sure at all. But I like if De Bruyne's fit, having him for the Norwich game and having a City option to captain over Salah at home to Burnley is something I quite like. Because I'm all about spotting those options, those opportunities with the captaincy to go, right, okay, I know 60% are going to be on Salah. Well, I've got Salah, but I'm going to go on De Bruyne because I know the effective ownership. Do you remember that phrase? You like that one, don't you?
That's my favourite.
Is low, right, on a City captain. So it's an early opportunity to roll that dice. I probably won't do it because it's probably too early, but I'm kind of flirting with it here. I probably won't follow it through, and it'll be Bruno or Sancho. Yeah. Right. That's it. We've nearly done 2 hours. I thought we weren't going to do anywhere near that, right? But lo and behold,
an hour, I think you said.
we can't help ourselves, can we? We just get into a groove and just keep going. I hope we haven't bored anyone. It's the first one. I mean, we can't commit to anything, so it's a bit fuzzy at the moment. Hopefully, some of the data we showed is an interesting topic to discuss further. We're going to do more of that ticker analysis when we look at stats, though, definitely, because there's something there, I think. Few things to mention. Great and the Good League. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yep. So Great and the Good. Well, Greyhead is doing that. There'll be proper articles on Scout for that. He's expanded the league, which means I've stayed in.
I don't know how that happened. I mean, I made several calls. I don't, he didn't return any of them. And then you're in there no matter what.
I gave him a lot of money, so that kind of countered the calls.
Yeah, fair enough.
So to give a rundown of who's in it, it's you and me, it's Fabio, it's Let's Talk Andy, he's made it. So
Slippers is in.
Slippers is in. FPL General, Villaronca, the mysterious, the real myth. Not you.
Not me, no.
Villaronca's the real myth. Magnus, Matthew Jones, Jeffrey Dance, Zophar, Tom Stevenson, who's Hall of Fame number 2.
He deserves to be in. What season is he? I mean, Hall of Fame number 2, right?
Unbelievable. Yep. Neil Rigg, Tom Freeman, John T, and Les Caldwell, who won the Great Good Mini League.
Brilliant.
Last year.
Love that. Love the fact that Greyhead promotes the winner of that.
Yeah, really cool.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Late Riser has chosen not to be in for anyone who.
So he's made way for Zophar, right?
So he's kindly passed the baton to Zophar.
Yeah.
And just to mention as well, Greyhead's community tournament. So if you head over to Scout, and you look at community articles, there is a Fantasy Scout community tournament. These, honestly, they are one of my favourite things.
Because you can buy FPL managers, right? And you can have them.
Yeah. So it's different. So it's always different. There wasn't one last year, but it's always different. There was like there was a draft one. There was a you're a manager and you recruit players, and this one is similar to that. So at the moment they're taking applications for people who want to manage a team. And then there's like a kind of auction where you can like buy other managers and they can join your team. Yeah. Some of those managers are the ones I've just mentioned, the Great and the Good. So you and I are going to be bought by someone for a few quid, not real quid.
Unfortunately, no. You know what I'm like with the anything, I'll do anything. Yeah.
So if you're interested in managing a group of people, and I've done it before and loved it, you just basically need to set up a Google spreadsheet. Get a Slack channel or a WhatsApp channel, and then invite your team in, and then you just send a team sheet to Greyhead or whoever's managing it every time, and it's great. So if you're interested in being a manager, head over to Scout and look at that. If you're interested in just being someone in the pool of people who people can buy and recruit, then just look out for an article that'll be coming in a few weeks on that. And finally, just to mention, because these guys, they do so much work on these tournaments, Boris Bodega, Total52, FPL Kaka, FPL Verbinho, there's so much work that goes into these tournaments and they nail it every time. And I cannot stress enough how fun they are. So go and do it.
I remember those early tournaments when I was on Scout, and it's amazing. And that's what the community's all about, right? These guys don't do it for anything but the love of it, right? And
Mozambique was my favourite year. That's when we all had it was like a World Cup.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, Mozambique.
Yeah.
I was the manager, I think, of that. And we got to the quarterfinals, I think, did quite well.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Well, it's brilliant what they do, and so do support it. Blackbox League, we've got the code at the bottom there, VJNG38.
Yep.
Sign up. We want to try and get in the top 5 this year, right?
We want to get into the top 5 this year.
Yeah.
And there will be prizes this year.
Incentives to join our league. Wow.
Trophies and rewards and wooden spoons for losers.
Okay, nice.
No Deliveroo meals from me. I can't afford that.
And The Apprentice.
Not until the SuperChats start up again.
Yeah, we'll do those soon, but not yet. The Apprentice.
Yes.
We're doing it. Next week.
Yes, we've got our apprentices locked in. I think you're going to really like them. We're going to have 4 videos next week, hopefully, introducing them and then talk about it. So the idea is, do you want to explain what the idea is, Mark?
Yeah, if you don't know what we're doing, we're taking 2 FPL managers who've never played the game before, and we recruited people who purposely don't know anything about the game. They might know a bit about football, they might not. And the idea is that we're going to subject them to various tools and expose them to various bits of the community. So we might show one of them the fixture ticker, we might show one of them Twitter and get them to join Twitter. And we're going to study how it affects their decision making, and we're going to talk to them about it as they play.
I'd say it's even better than that, because we've actually got a proper experiment going on.
Yeah, go on.
Because one apprentice is not going to be introduced to stats at all.
No.
There's someone who likes football already but has never played FPL, so it's going to be eye test, gut feel, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the other apprentice doesn't really know too much about football, and she's going to get on Twitter. She's going to be looking at, listening to podcasts. She's going to be looking at stats tables and fixture leagues. Who's going to do better? And will both of them beat us? Probably.
Yeah, exactly. So is the apprentice without any kind of exposure to any of the tools, the pre-season tools, any of the data, nothing from Twitter? Are they going to do better than the FPL manager who gets all of that pre-season? We'll see, won't we?
We could single-handedly... You built Scout, and now you could single-handedly bring it down.
I didn't think of that.
Eye test, I'll be out of a job.
Yeah, well, maybe that was my intention. No, of course not. No, it's going to be good. And so we're going to start recording those videos next week, and we'll be putting them out not live, but as recordings. And then we'll be back with a live black box in a couple of weeks, I guess, when by then we can start picking proper teams. And you can say it's a team reveal, but it's a draft now. It's a draft. Right?
Team reveal.
Draft. It's a good night for me.
Good night, everyone.